Well, hello everyone out on the socials. Welcome to Piano Tech Radio Hour. If you're out there on Facebook and YouTube, we will be going into the show shortly. Just like to do a little bit of intro material here first, and then we're going to let folks in on the live Zoom call. Let's see here. I'm going to make you, actually, I'm going to make you co-host as well, Ben, just in case you see someone you want to let in, but
Sure.
you don't have to pay too much attention there. Hey everyone, welcome to the Zoom. Great to see you. Love to see those regulars returning. I'm going to spotlight myself and spotlight our guest today. Love to see those newbies coming in as well. This is Piano Tech Radio Hour. Always like to give folks just a moment to get settled, and then we'll intro the program and let you know what we're here doing and get moving. We are out on the socials, Facebook and YouTube. If you're out there on Facebook and YouTube, keep an eye out. We always try to put some links in the socials so you can join us on Zoom if you want to get a little closer to the action. If you have questions or comments, you can feel free to put them into the chat. Again, on the socials or Zoom, we'll try to interact and respond. If you're here in the live Zoom audience and you got something to say, certainly you could speak up in the chat, and if appropriate, we'll respond there, or if it makes sense, we could bring it on audio, video, whatever seems appropriate, guys. All right, I'm going to intro the program so we get some context, and then we'll dive into our show today. This is, again, Piano Tech Radio Hour. What we do here is we gather every Saturday to meet with and learn from the most fascinating and knowledgeable folks in the piano world and elsewhere, including manufacturers, rebuilders, musicians, makers of other instruments, and of course, piano techs. Our mutual goal is to become better at our crafts, to help each other, and to create an ever more musical world together. Piano Tech Radio Hour is brought to you by Piano Technicians Masterclasses. That's an online learning resource that brings you cutting-edge instruction from piano industry masters without leaving your home. You can find out more about that at pianotechniciansmasterclass.com. In addition, you could subscribe to Piano Tech Radio Hour for just 16 bucks a month. You get direct access to each week's private Zoom call, as well as all the archival recordings of over 200 episodes in our member area. You can join Radio Hour at bit.ly/join PTRH. That's bit.ly/join PTRH. Also like to give a shout out for the audio only versions of this show as the podcast, pianotechradio.com. In addition, you can check out our Substack. We put some cool articles out there. We get technical with those for those of you that work on pianos, and a bit tangential to that as well. You might learn something about action mechanisms, designing pianos, but also we'll talk about stuff relevant for musicians like the neuroscience of practicing or conducting or composing. So stay tuned. If you're interested, you can check out the blog on Substack and you can find out more. Of course, we have our socials, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. And if you want to get updates, go to our website and get on the email list. Again, that's pianotechniciansmasterclass.com, and it's easy to sign up for the email. All right. Right now, I would love to intro today's guest. His name is Ben Laude, and he's a concert pianist. He's an educator. He's a creative force behind some of YouTube's most illuminating piano content, from breaking down the artistry of legends like Yuja Wang and Garrick Ohlsson to capturing the creative spark of young stars such as Yunchan Lim. Ben has built a bridge between performance and storytelling that is reshaping how we experience classical music online. A bit more about Ben. He has been described by the New York Times as superb in pace, tone, and eloquence. He's performed in renowned venues such as Alice Tully Hall, Carnegie's Weill Recital Hall. He has created hundreds of video lessons and interviews with leading pianists, earning a YouTube Silver Creator Award for his work with tone bass piano before launching his own rapidly growing channel. So, Ben, we're going to learn a lot more about you today, and we'll probably wish we had more time by the end of all this. But welcome to Technicians Masterclass's Piano Tech Radio Hour.
Thanks, Ethan. Maybe I could just interview you because I don't know anything about what happens on the inside of a piano, and I've really been meaning to find out for about 30 years now.
All right, great.
So
Well,
if you
we're
want to
here
just
to
flip this around, no.
you. I mean, whenever you're ready, we want to answer your questions. And I'm sure we've got a bunch of, we got our piano nerds here in the audience, and they always love to feel useful. So,
Well, I mean, pianists, we play the one instrument where you can actually ignore the mechanism of the instrument. And
oh
it's
yeah.
just outsourced to other people to take care of it. And you don't have to, we're not to blame if it's out of tune, somebody else is. So that's why I went into piano, is I didn't have to have the pressure of tuning my own instrument.
Yes, intonation is not necessarily an issue when you're a piano player.
Right.
But I would say, one thing that we talk about on this program here and there, and it's been an insightful development, is the collaboration between manufacturer, technician, and pianist when it really comes down to playing the acoustic piano. It's not obvious, but it's a team sport. And if I think, maybe there'll be something instructional here about how, as pianists, you can learn to better communicate with the technician, and it makes your work better, whether it's
Well,
recorded or live performance.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. I was just being tongue in cheek before.
Hmm.
I don't think it's a good thing that pianists are completely separated from those who work on the inside of on the inside of the instrument. So yeah, I mean, honestly, it's mysterious to me, and there's like real debates that you probably have answers to about to what degree a pianist can actually control certain aspects of their
Of tone.
expression and tone.
Yeah.
When we talk amongst each other or in lessons, we
Hmm.
describe using metaphors what's happening with the instrument, but
Yeah.
whether or not that correlates with some kind of physical reality, I don't know. It's mystical to me. So
Yes. And I can give a bit of my perspective. I was going to call it insight, I'll be humble and it's just my perspective. But we have been doing this program since the pandemic. So, I think it's been like 5 years now, right? And what I love about it is themes develop. I can pull certain what I feel are pieces of wisdom because you see them over and over again. And I think one of the patterns that I've seen is at the upper echelons of any domain, because we've talked to people who, make instruments, we've talked to composers, performers, all sorts of people, right? Is that those sort of nuanced little things that people talk about where you're like, what are they talking about? Is that BS? Like, they're hearing that? Am I hearing that? Like, does that matter? Or the things that you wonder if it matters. Now, these are the things, granted, that the people at the upper echelons are talking about, right? Where they mention it and you're like, I, I don't, I don't know if that's important or not. You don't necessarily need to pay attention to the folks that are talking BS at the lower echelons. So those places, I feel, are the places that make you great, where you have those little questions about the nuances and you go ahead and trust your instincts to explore them.
yeah, I bet that's true. I need to make a video about this for my channel at some point. I think that's the solution here. Because, for example, pianists are at a high level obsessed with touch.
Hmm.
Um, and there's a question which is, well, okay, but on the inside of the instrument, isn't it just the speed of the hammer
Hmm.
ultimately that is contributing to dynamics? How does a pianist touch, actually, don't you just need to make sure you're getting the various velocities,
Hmm.
right? And this touch is some secondary, sensation you're experiencing, but shouldn't you try to just focus on like throwing the hammers at the right speed in order to and at the right time in order to do what you
Hmm.
want? But anyway, I mean, I guess I'm not here to interview you. You're here to interview me. So but I just wanted to maybe
Well,
approach
I'll
that to you.
clarify what we're here to do. We're just here to be in the moment and have an interesting conversation. So I'm happy
That
to take
works
it
too.
wherever it goes. I will just say one more thing on this topic, and then I'd love to kind of explore your background so people have it. There's a great book and a great person. The book is called Pianos Inside Out, and the person is Mario Egret. He's the author of the book. He works with Juilliard as their on-staff piano technician. Now, the book has a lot of technical information that's primarily for, piano technicians. But there are some places, because he is a trained classical pianist, where he does explore these very questions of, yeah, what can you control, what can't you control? And I found those places fascinating because, again, those are places where I might have thought, I don't think you can. But he makes some good arguments to explain, the details there. So, and if people want to take a reference from this discussion we're having here, check out Pianos Inside Out and Mario E. Greco Juilliard, the technician there, and you'll find some interesting nuances about what you can and can't control about your tone as a pianist.
Okay, I've just written it down.
Wonderful. All right, let's just talk more about where you're coming from. I gave you a little bit of a preview of this before we started. I like to dive into people's past and imagine their sort of little musical brains developing. Sometimes that happens when you're 3 or 4. Sometimes it doesn't happen until you're 15 or 16 or later. What's been your journey into music? What are your earliest memories, and also when did you know it might have become one of the focuses of your life, if not the central focus?
Well, I don't know exactly what I was happening when I was prenatal. It's possible my mother was playing Mozart in the, for my developing brain. But yeah, again, I have no memories before the age of 3 or 4. So let's just assume though that my dad was somewhere in a room at some point playing the piano. He at some point was some kind of amateur pianist, really just dabbling, nothing, not even a serious amateur per se, but he took lessons as a kid. My his mother, my grandmother, um, she's a retired piano teacher. That's the only real musical connection in my family. I'm not really from a musical family. My father's a scientist and a uh, university educator, administrator. I grew up in Austin. He works at UT Austin. And if anything, I grew up crawling around my dad's chemistry lab. He was running a lab of grad students. He had a big mass spectrometer. I had no idea what it was doing, but this was like the early sort of computing and internet era of the 90s. And so I was very just a curious kid, and I was into all kinds of things. Music was just one of many extracurricular activities that I was part of. And that began to change, and music began to become a more prominent part of my life right around puberty, I would say. And I don't think that's a coincidence. There was something about my hormonal chemistry changing that also made me start feeling things for the music that I was supposed to be learning for my piano lessons. So it took 7 or 8 years of piano lessons to actually finally have anything more than a fleeting feeling for the pieces I was being assigned. Yeah, I liked music here and there, but if I responded to anything musically, it was probably pop music on the radio. I loved just whatever the hits were in the 90s. I mean, I could still sing a lot of these songs, you know. And so, but classical music was more of a chore for a while, I guess. So it's just funny when I see kids taking lessons for a few years and then quitting. I'm like, what if you kept trying? Not that they should have necessarily, but I could have easily just left piano for any
Hmm.
any any
Hmm.
number of times before high school. But then right around high school, I got a new teacher. Like I mentioned, I started kind of having goosebumps and tingling sensations when I was listening to Chopin or Beethoven or soon Rachmaninoff, these kinds of I'm most accessible kinds of piano literature. Eventually, symphonies, piano concertos got me into symphonic repertoire, and I just started listening a lot. And it was part of me also getting better as a pianist, having a teacher who developed my technique more. And it didn't take long, but once I was 13, 14, 15, I just became an absolute piano fanatic. I've actually never been as obsessed with the piano and its literature and the history of recordings and all these kinds of things as I was in high school. And maybe a little bit into college, but once life hits you, you don't love things like you once did. Well, at least maybe that's a sad kind of thing to say. It just changes. It's different. I wish
Hmm.
I could go back and feel the way I felt about music in high school now again. I wish I could just take a pill every day and experience that again. But I think my videos are, if anything, they're a way of me reigniting or revisiting these what were really boyhood passions and interests, and I guess trying to invite other people to feel similar things, however old or young they are. So
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. It's I totally agree with you, and maybe you say something off the cuff and maybe it resonates differently than what you're intending, but I think I get where you're coming from, where it's not that you necessarily lose the passion for things, like you said, life gets in the way and you go, okay, well, I don't know. I can't I don't know if I have time to sit here and listen to Pink Floyd's The Wall, 4 times in a row or something like that. Or you feel like other things are drawing your attention, and it's not necessarily that you lose passion, but responsibilities kick in. Is that kind of what you were indicating, or was it a different
I think
bent on that?
I think it's that, but and also I don't know what it is. I'm not a developmental psychologist. I feel like there are other adults who still seem to feel things the way I or most people did when you're a kid, but just the new experiences of discovery when you're a child, through your
Yes,
teenage years are
yes.
just a different in all domains. We don't need to cover all of them, but I mean, mentioned Pink Floyd. I was into classic rock a lot in high school. I remember I used to say stupid things like, how come all of the classic versions of things are the best? Classic rock, classic hip hop, classical music. Anyway, I got into my dad's CD collection and was listening to all these things. And for Christmas, it was the CD era, or CD boom was going on. I mean, just like I asked for CDs of all kinds of different genres of music, but soon I just remember like a Christmas day, maybe I was a sophomore in high school or something, just getting Abato's Beethoven Ninth Symphony recording and just sitting, closing my door and just sitting in my room and just listening to it for 70 minutes and just like taking out the shrink wrap of the CD and smelling the liner notes and putting it in my CD Walkman and just being alone like with this music. It was just I could get off the call right now and go listen to Beethoven's Ninth Symphony and I'll enjoy it, but it won't feel like that did. It won't.
Mm-hmm.
I won't. I can listen to Rachmaninoff's Third Concerto, the same recordings that I did back then.
Mm,
And in fact, often we reach for the same ones that once touched us, but it's like you're always trying to revisit and recapture that feeling. So, yeah, I think the only way adults really can keep revisiting things are either to do partake in unhealthy kinds of behaviors, which I won't recommend, or seek out new experiences, new sort of ecstatic experiences. Possibly meditation can reignite these kinds of feelings of awakening. But the fact is, that's what I felt for a sustained number of years in high school, and it ended up just changing my entire life because of this.
mm,
I just can't stress enough just the subjective experience of listening to music. It was overwhelming to me, and I
mm,
was obsessed with it. And then it drew me to the piano, and I would try to sight read things and do my best, learn things. But I was a bad practicer. I've done my best. I've become a decent pianist, but my interest in music is much bigger than my ability to play it.
mm.
So
So, so tell us a little bit more about your journey here in sharing this, with others through technology, right? So you've been developing a YouTube channel, you got a Patreon, you have now um, done something that you didn't have in the 90s, right? When you were starting to learn about music, it's much easier to connect and resonate with folks all over the world, right? Literally on the other side of the planet. Tell us about how that journey kind of started and then began to develop.
I think I might be just the right age to be doing what I'm doing. I'm very lucky because I'm a category of millennial who is sort of mid to older, whatever millennial. I was born in 1986, and I still remember very vividly a pre-internet era, certainly a pre-iPhone and social media era. I mean, I didn't have that in college. I think I'm lucky to have missed that, but still had internet access, of course. I mentioned that I would crawl around my dad's lab. It was the state system that developed the internet in the first place in the 80s. And it was university professors sending each other emails before
Hmm.
anybody else was. And so my dad brought home the internet in the 90s, and I was getting on dial up, beep, bop, remember these sounds if you got on the phone and somebody else was on. And so this was magical. I mean, sitting there waiting 6 minutes for one image to load, like a pixel at a time. It was kind of before streaming, but there were message boards everywhere. This is what the internet was really for. There were uh, internet. the video game message boards, whatever. I wasn't a big gamer, but my brother and I would play some video games. We'd get up and look up the cheat codes so we could plug them into SimCity 2000 or Resident Evil or Donkey Kong or whatever we were doing. It was fun. People were talking about these games. And once I got into piano more and more, I was like, let's check out what piano message boards exist. And some of them still exist. But one was called the Chopin Files that became defunct pretty early on. And then we all moved over to Piano World Forum and Piano Street's another one. Um, this is before Facebook, but yeah, I mean, you probably wasn't using Google yet, but I would Yahoo or Ask Jeeves about piano and find these communities where other people liked the same thing I liked because I didn't know anybody else who liked this stuff. No one really in my family was obsessed with it, although they were happy that I was and were perfectly happy to support it. But no one in high school, I mean, I was basically hiding my interests from my high school friends. And so it was online. I mean, it was online communities where, for better or worse, in this world, you can find other people who love the same thing you love. And so that's what I did. And so bringing it up to date, I actually think in many ways, I'm just, yeah, my job or whatever I do now, um, couldn't have happened then, but it was already beginning to happen. The communities were there, the infrastructure was being built. And in high school, one of my other fun hobbies was video editing. And I got really into the very first version of iMovie that exists. I had an iPod early on, so I was already sort of plugged in. It wasn't all integrated into one stupid device you carry around in your pocket, but basically we had what was going to end up being the smartphone. We had this stuff, and any school project I had in high school, I'd make a video instead of a poster board or a book report. I would get my friends together and make something silly and edit it. And so I just developed skills as sort of I was always interested in creating media and producing it, editing it. I watched a lot of TV as a kid. My dad was a really critical person. We liked this show, Mystery Science Theater, because it was just dudes making fun of bad movies. Whenever he
Hmm.
rented movies from Blockbuster, he would always make fun of them or if mock them if they were bad. So like it gave me a critical eye to how media was made
Sure.
and so just that helped. And then when something's good, I was really, really into it, and I was interested in why it was good. And so that matters now because I mean, most of what I do is edit video. Of course,
Hmm.
I'm coming up with concepts. I'm drawing on all of my years of training and reading piano, about music, about history and culture. I've had experience writing. I've started newspapers. When I was at Juilliard, I started a student newspaper there. I've always liked writing, editing, doing media, telling jokes, whatever. Just it all probably comes from watching too much TV as a kid. But finally, my favorite thing is making it. Is
Hmm.
getting so sick of consuming and scrolling and watching other people's content. Like nothing is more exciting for me than making my own thing that doesn't exist yet, and having whatever's in my head, sort of bringing it to life for other people to enjoy and discuss. And I've just been really
Absolutely.
lucky to do that as much as I have. So.
Yeah, I mean it's yeah, hopefully we even though we have some complications here with AI and in some ways it helps more people be creative, I suppose, but I'm looking forward to a future where more and more people are, creating and sharing what's, unique about them to share with the world. We have a video here that you had shared to potentially use during our session today. Maybe we can check out a small bit of it or the whole thing, depending. And this is the century-old pianist behind Yuhan
Yunchan Lim.
Yunchan Lim. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about the video. I'll get it queued up,
Yeah,
and we'll
sure.
take a look and listen.
This video is part of a larger podcast series I created called the Chopin Podcast. And that finally culminated uh, in the final episode that I released a month ago while I was in Warsaw. I was invited to Warsaw to host the live streams of the International Chopin Competition. And I was invited in part because of the Chopin podcast I was making, which is this exhaustive 16 part episode series, more than 30 hours long. It took me a year to produce, just nonstop working on it. It dives into pretty much all the music of Chopin in detail with some of the great Chopin interpreters and scholars in the world. So I was really lucky to do that. And because I'm obsessed with video creation and I have a YouTube channel, first and foremost, I don't consider myself a podcaster per se. In making the podcast, which is available on podcast platforms, I wanted to make sure there were video segments for every second of the show. So I edited very detailed and engaging videos, which also worked on top of the audio, if that makes sense. So like I actually have in Premiere, like the lower part, all of the audio tracks I will export as one long podcast episode, and then on top of that I will build the video. I already have the interviews there that I did. I have the
Hmm.
when I host the video, and then I just kind of edit around that and
Mm.
turn them into engaging videos for YouTube. So a lot of people just watch the YouTube versions of these things.
Mm.
And this one is special because it's going to make me talk about Yunchan Lim, but I can talk about him afterward. But the context for this segment is that it's part of a 2 episode double bill about Chopin's etudes, pretty much the most challenging and important technical pieces ever written for the instrument. And Yunchan Lim is a sort of phenomenal young pianist who won the Van Cliburn competition in 2022. And I'd covered him before in some videos. And when he released his first album, it was all the Chopin etudes. And I was right in the middle of my Chopin podcast. I said, let's listen to this. And when I listened to it, I discovered that he was doing a lot of things in his interpretation that I recognized from my many years of listening to lots of pianists from the past. And so this is a snippet where it's probably worth watching the whole thing. I give some historical background to just different styles of piano playing and Chopin etude interpretation. And then I introduce Yunchan and I show how he's actually borrowing techniques from dudes who played the same pieces 100 years ago. So
Mm.
that's the
Okay.
intro. Yeah.
And I'm just remembering, if you do have this file on your computer by chance, the one you're using right now?
Yeah.
Okay. Why don't you make sure you can find it? Because we may use your computer to stream because before we started, we realized my computer was having some upload issues. So I'm going to try it. I'm going to hit play. If it has an issue, we might have you do it. I can walk you through the
All right.
appropriate way to
Let
share it.
me
But yeah, let
find
me
it.
hit play and see what's going on, see if
Okay.
this works.
In 2023, Yunchan Lim had begun his ascent from competition winner to concert artist.
Let me just pause it. Was that coming through okay for you?
Well, the audio was great, but I actually admit that I was hopping over to
Oh,
another
okay.
screen to try to
All
get
right.
my video. Just play it another second. Let me see. I think the video might be a little blurry.
And by 2024, Yunchan was gracing the big stage at Carnegie Hall
Yeah, I
and
mean the video
releasing his first
at least
album.
from what I can see, the video is blurry and choppy.
Is it stalling out? Okay, let's have you
Yeah,
try it. Let me walk you through the best way to share it. If you go to the share button,
yeah, I just need to share the tab that has it and make sure the audio is on, right?
yeah, there's another way we could do it, but if that works for you, go for it.
I think it would be best. I just have to find it, so
Mm-hmm.
you need to give me like 30 seconds. I'm not sure exactly what I named the file, and I just need to search for
Okay,
it.
yeah, no problem. Yeah, on my end, the file has a
What
0
is it
and a
called?
1 at the front of it.
Okay.
And let's see here. I'm gonna look at my 0 1 space the century dash
Oh
old
yeah,
pianist.
the century oldie. I'll search for it real quick.
Yeah, it's
Um,
probably a track number or something, I suppose, 0 1.
There it is. All right, I'm gonna open it here,
Okay.
and I'm going to call it up over here. So allow multiple presenters to share.
Yeah,
Replace
let me
current share.
unshare.
Okay,
That's
I got
fine,
it. Here we go. Share sound. All right, ready?
I think. So yeah, let's do it.
All right, let's see if this works.
In 2023, Yunchan
Great.
Lim had begun
Great.
his ascent from competition winner to concert artist. And by 2024, Yunchan was gracing the big stage at Carnegie Hall and releasing his first album with Decca. The program Yunchan chose for both debuts was the complete cycle of the Chopin etudes. A review in Gramophone magazine hailed Yunchan's album as a triumph that belongs among the Mount Olympus of Chopin etude recordings, leading Yunchan to win the Gramophone Award for 2024 Young Artist of the Year, and more recently, the prestigious Diapason d'Or in the Young Talent category. Since hype tends to beget hype, I thought it would be useful to stay on the sidelines for this one, and rather than try to rank Yunchan's etudes in the pantheon of great recordings, I'll instead ask the question, why does he play like that? In 2023, the teenage Korean pianist curated an Apple Music playlist he called The Golden Age of Piano, the first track of which features an almost 100-year-old recording of Chopin's Black Key Etude performed by Polish pianist Ignaz Friedman. Whoa. Exploring the contributions Friedman and his Golden Age contemporaries made to the recorded legacy of the Chopin etudes will shed light on what Yunchan is up to in his own interpretations. But before we get there, let us first consider the reigning champions of the Chopin etudes. During the second half of the 20th century, the Chopin etudes were owned by two pianists, Vladimir Ashkenazy and Maurizio Pollini. Indeed, the pair arguably shared the throne as the most dominant recording artists of the entire standard piano literature during the flourishing of the record industry, from the heyday of LPs in the 1970s to the CD boom of the 1990s. Ashkenazy and Pollini first made their marks with Chopin, winning silver and gold respectively in the 1955 and 1960 Warsaw competitions. Although coming out of different traditions and acquiring their own unique artistic identities, Ashkenazy and Pollini together represented the new modern sound of the concert pianist. Both belonged to a larger post-war zeitgeist, favoring objectivity in interpretations of classical works that sought to realize the definite contours of pieces like the Chopin etudes, articulating their dramatic character with an unprecedented crystalline power. This is not to say that pianists have been living in a monolith of conformity over the past 50 years, but Ashkenazy and Pollini's recordings have served as the most influential model for recent generations of pianists learning the etudes. After all, it's still hard to find better recordings of the Warhorse Opus 10 No. 1 than theirs. If there is a successor among the new generation of C major etudes, it might be found in Seongjin Cho's radiant performance of the piece from the 2015 Chopin competition. We're talking about a Greek sculpture of piano playing here, an Apollonian ideal. A Pollinian ideal? But in this age of YouTube and music streaming, a new kind of pianist has emerged, one raised with the full recorded legacy of the piano at their fingertips, who stumbles on some of the gems of the earlier recording era and becomes a 20-year-old going on 150. Enter Yunchan Lim. While the powerhouse recordings of Ashkenazy or Pollini have surely made an impact on such a ravenous listener as Yunchan, the Korean phenom's tastes seem to be shaped less by these post-war box sets and more by the pre-war singles recorded by pianists of the so-called Golden Age. In Yunchan's own words, quote, "A huge universe of pianists played this repertoire, and I always wanted to become a fundamental musician like them, so I decided to follow their route." Some of the pianists he cites as his favorites include Alfred Cortot, Ignaz Friedman, Joseph Levine, and Mark Homburg, among others. All of these musicians were born and educated in the 19th century. Pianists of this so-called Golden Age are characterized by the individuality and spontaneity in their playing, expressed in generally sweeping phrasing, but punctuated by moments of free rubato, playful accents, and interplay between polyphonic voices. This approach serves certain etudes more than others. For example, Yunchan's recording of Opus 10 No. 1 is probably the least remarkable in his whole set. It's not bad. Elite playing, as always. There's just literally nothing for me to remark on, because the piece itself offers few to no options for Golden Age tinkering. Rather, it's the other C major etude from Opus 10 where we can hear Yunchan's old soul come out of its shell. In a pivotal moment towards the end of the piece, the music gets caught in midair while continuing to chatter away. And I want you to listen to how Ignaz Friedman takes this opportunity to straight up ring a bell with his left hand, turning his pinky into a mallet and striking the middle C far louder than the rest of the texture. Now listen to Yunchan, and you'll notice he uses the same left-hand pinky mallet as Friedman. But then a couple bars later, he goes one step further by turning his left-hand thumb into the bow of a violin and sings out a beautiful inner voice with it. For the record, Polini and Ashkenazi simply revel in the lightness of the music in this spot, driven by a larger unified character with no need for intrusive pedal tones and alto lines. Here's Polini. Now, here's Ashkenazi.
Thank you.
Sorry, that was a little long. The whole time I was just thinking about things I could have edited differently, but
Absolutely, I'm sure.
I've watched that a million times, so I feel nothing for it now.
No, it's great though. And I think this is a little bit of what we referred to back at the beginning of the nuances, right, that are important when you're aiming for the top, and to take the time that you're taking to listen to these various recordings and make comparisons and put it in a workable language for, anyone. I mean, I'm a pianist, but I'm not a classical pianist who plays a lot of Chopin, right? So hearing how you're thinking about it, hearing how they're thinking about it, is so wonderful and inspiring. So thank you for taking the time to put these together.
Yeah, thank you. I also think video matters a lot, even though this is a Chopin podcast. I knew the videos would matter a lot for this particular kind of segment, especially
Hmm.
because just yeah, I mean, maybe you don't know the scores of the Chopin etudes intimately, but some people can't even read music per se, but they're good they're perceptive listeners.
Mm-hmm.
And you can show the score and highlight elements of the score and even have a musically illiterate person follow what's going on. And I think this is something that kind of hit me only when I started making videos and when I worked at the company Tonebase. We had a lot of amateur subscribers who, were still just trying to get better at the fundamentals of music. And so I was always thinking about them while also making very high level content about the hardest pieces. So trying to just bridge that gap. And it made me ask interesting and challenging questions about how to popularize this art form. Because it's very, I mean, it can seem like a very esoteric field, and it is, but as we like to say, it's not rocket science. I think musicians like to pretend like what we do is so much more complicated than it actually is. But I mean, a musical score, yeah, I don't want to take fluency for granted. It takes a long time to be able to, or I was lucky I had it from childhood. But yeah, I mean, if you're learning to read music as a second language, it's not going to happen overnight for sure. But you can look at a musical score, and if you just notice quickly that it's basically a kind of coordinate grid, and one of the axes represents time and the other represents pitch up and down. It's like you don't have to know that something's a B flat or an F natural or whatever, especially if someone's highlighting it for you. Like the thing you're hearing, it's this right now.
Right.
If anything, and I know this from watching videos of other old areas of culture, which I know little about and have little expertise in, and yet and so I don't understand half of what's going on, but good video can help draw my attention to something that I do understand about it. I think people actually really like being in the presence of these otherwise intimidating cultural fields and having people who are on the inside of them just shine lights in ways that are literally enlightening, without feeling like they have to grasp and understand like the whole weight of the tradition in order to appreciate it. And so I think YouTube's really good for that exact thing, and that's why I just feel like I found my niche. I found my
Yeah.
community. It's what I like to
Yeah.
do. It's a good medium for it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I haven't published this yet, but for a different podcast I'm doing on education, I just interviewed a woman who represents a educational app for the incarcerated. And we talked about how literacy is one of the biggest issues that you might have to deal with, and also you'd be surprised at how much illiteracy is a problem. And we talked about, well, even though they have an app, how are you going to go about teaching literacy? And it's a wonderful thing, again, is we have videos. Anybody can watch a video. Watching a video is just like living your life, right? If you're given the right content, um, you don't have to know much more from the start to even just learn to read, right? Through a video, through a basic video that walks you through the process. So I totally see what you're saying, right? It's such a rich medium and it allows you to access things at multiple levels for different folks and even do simultaneous communication, right? With different levels. You've got something that speaks to the audience that knows the advanced concept, something that breaks it down for someone on
Absolutely.
a simpler level.
It's funny you mentioned that. I actually taught in a program for incarcerated people earlier this year, music
Mm.
classes actually.
Oh,
So
wonderful.
yeah, it's called Project Music Heals Us, and
Hmm.
I had a friend who was doing it, and he was like, "You should do this. You'd be great at it." I was like, "All right, let's give it a shot."
Hmm.
And so they were in the Bay Area in California, and I remember the first one very vividly. It was a women's correctional facility, and I led basically a class in writing a song, and not classical. I mean, I it was any song, so I had to draw on my own limited sort of pop music knowledge, but I wasn't there to like teach the history of pop music. I was there to just get them to sing and
Hmm.
just start using their voices and using their imaginations to sort of maybe just be creative and develop their own ideas musically. And but part of the challenge was, okay, they're not 90 most of these women can't never took a music lesson or can't read music, but I have to represent through somehow visually what they're singing, and just immediately drawing solfege syllables, for example. I even put them on a treble clef, not because I was like trying to teach that all good boys deserve fudge or anything like that, but just to kind of have that be there as a reference point. It's like you don't understand exactly what that means now, but maybe later it will have been so familiar you start to pick up and read individual notes. But mostly it was just to have lines to put the notes on. It's a very
Hmm.
practical thing to
Hmm.
do, and so uh, in many ways, weirdly, I mean, I've taught for a long time before I made videos about music, um, but in some ways, I felt like I was doing a kind of a weird live version of my own videos and just drawing on the kind of visualizations that I create in when I edit to try to enhance and illuminate certain concepts. As much as I like a nice long university lecture where it's just talking, even a great professor is going to use chalk on a chalkboard and just give you something to look at, so that part of your brain which is trying to grasp concepts being expounded on in time can attach them spatially to things. So I honestly, I mean, I don't want to I haven't started developing this yet. I don't care if somebody steals my idea. I'm sure somebody else has had it. I just haven't seen it yet. I think we need way better animations in music, in visualizing music notation. I've
Hmm.
seen some, and like there are definitely enhanced graphical scores of different kinds, but I'm talking YouTube videos that teach high level music concepts and repertoire, and could be other genres than classical too, for sure, where the notes themselves come to life, the themes, the motives can sort of fly away from and be abstracted from the musical score, discussed in isolation, then thrown back in context. Just I'm imagining a visual world of animating and bringing music to life in a way that my little highlights on scores that you saw in this video would, it would really dwarf that, I think. So I don't know. I'm hoping in 2026 I have some time and make some friends with people who have some experience in this way. But I don't know if you know the channel, if you're into math, but I think it's called Three Blue, One Brown.
Hmm.
It's an
I'm not
amazing
sure.
math. It's an amazing math channel.
Okay.
It will explain to you the most high level concepts in
Right.
calculus, for
Infinity,
example,
adding infinities or something. Yeah,
but
yeah.
it does it with it built its own animation engine. The guy who made it is genius, and
Hmm.
so he's not using any software to do this. He's actually made a custom animation just for displaying mathematical concepts in this sort of animated coordinate grid world. I think we need something like that for music. I mean, people would love. I love watching that, and I don't know anything he's talking about. I think people
Hmm.
would love immersing themselves in these visualized musical worlds. Someone just has to make it, and it
Mm.
could reach so many more millions of people who just
Hmm.
love watching the videos. And some
Right.
segment of them at the bottom of the funnel is going to be like, I have to go study music now. This is incredible. So I think there's a
Hmm.
lot more ways to bring the otherwise, arcane and esoteric field that I'm in. Obviously, music's very popular, but the classical music, classical piano, it's still relatively small. Right? It's a kind of closed world, insulated world. I'd love to just open more doors to people because it's so beautiful. I mean, I want people to hear and feel what I've heard and felt for this.
Yeah. Yes, I think also, one theme too that's important to keep alive these days is we have compression of everything. You have compression of the music from the WAV file or for the record done in the WAV files to the MP3s. You have compression of information, from a 2-hour lecture down to a 10-second clip, of a headline instead of the whole article. Um, but I think anywhere we have space where people can experience richness and they can be pulled into it to such a degree where they'll stay there and sit, longer than 10 seconds and uh and enjoy it, right? There's something there. There's something there to be enjoyed. You listen, go ahead, listen to MP3. Now, let me put you in a room with the highest level, audio files, sound setup, and you can hear, oh wow, there's a flute playing. And there's something magical there when people get an opportunity to experience the depth, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I there were old school documentaries made about the history of piano that I remember watching, and I got the DVDs or whatever of them when I was a kid, and I watched them. And because there wasn't YouTube yet, I would just watch them repeatedly. I watched them over and over and over again. But just that had an incredible impact on my and just introducing me to a world and a history and a culture, so that it wasn't just these dry sort of lesson books and the black and white keys of the piano and the kind of anxiety of piano lessons. And you know I we should expect most people to sort of, especially in America. I think there's other countries that have just developed musical culture and education, with more care and attention and funding than we do. But without it, I think maybe it's because I represent a country that has no, coordinated or top-down interest in educating people musically, that I feel like I need to make up for things through media.
Mm,
And it's inspired me in the past, and I've learned. I don't want to say I never learned anything in school. That's a dumb thing to say. But I think my most inspired experiences were moments of self-discovery, often
sure.
through video media. So that's just the part. I'm part of that generation. That's certainly the younger kids are too. But like you say, yeah, I mean, I don't know about what to do about these short form things. Obviously, it's a long form art form,
Mm,
and it benefits from concentration. But there's so much scrutiny on all the negative aspects of our culture. I do think we're already witnessing ways in which it's changing with certain kinds of taboos, with kinds of AI and other forms of media consumption. The 2010s were just a wild west for especially that particular segment of Gen Z and what they
mm,
were exposed to without
hmm.
any oversight or good ideas about how to. I think there's ways to use these same technologies for the better. And I think there's a very healthy suspicion of AI in favor of, which does bring into relief actual human creative acts. So it's like kind of
Mm,
good that AI exists and we should find the right purposes for it, because it also brings into relief when a human creates something. And at least for now, it's very evident, I think, when something is made by human imagination versus AI. Now, will that change in the future? That's for another podcast. But I'm mostly an optimist about these things, even though overall, I don't know. We could all be doomed. Who knows? But
yeah. Well,
moment to moment, day to day, I think things are exciting,
yeah,
and we should
yeah,
try to use technology for the best. Yeah.
absolutely. But on this topic, I would be remiss if I didn't speak about this with you in particular, because we're talking about using technology to bring the joy of music. And also, this is a podcast founded on a community of people who take care of a physical instrument of a piano with all its quirks and idiosyncrasies and problems. So maybe before we're cutting out, because we'll be out in maybe 5 or 10 here, can you speak a little bit of your clear passion for the acoustic instrument of the piano? What's important about keeping the acoustic instrument alive? Why are you not, as folk, I'm sure, you could be playing as Bernie Worrell, and Punkadelic playing the keyboard and the pitch bender and all that stuff, right? Why does the acoustic instrument excite you so much? And what do you think, how do we keep the future alive of the beauty of the instrument in people's hearts?
I'm not a scientist or an engineer or a physicist or an acoustician, but I can just feel that there's a difference in the kind of vibration that an acoustic instrument produces, especially when you're the one connected with it, and the kinds of processed digital, digitally mediated vibrations that we get now, or even in the analog days, of what playback technologies produce. And of course, both can be thrilling, um, but there's something when you can actually see that. Well, a piano is interesting because, like we said, now we're coming full circle to the very first topic. We're not in direct contact with the production of the sound. A violinist is, at least they're holding the thing that is, and they're looking right at it, and their left hand is directly physically contacting it. Uh, of course, singer is the most extreme example. They are the instrument. So strangely, they're also alienated from their sound because they can't hear it because they're inside of it.
Right.
But pretty much every instrument besides piano and organ, I would say, has a more direct physical contact with the physical production of the sound. So piano is already removed, and that already is in a weird way moving towards this hyper detachment that we get from playing digital and non-acoustic instruments. So even though the piano is acoustic, you know what I mean? I'm
Hmm.
removed from the production of the sound. And
Hmm.
so, nevertheless, when I put my hands into the D flat major chords at the beginning of the Tchaikovsky competition on a Steinway grand, or I mean, even an upright piano, it doesn't matter. I mean, you feel the instrument sort of pushing back at you. You feel the
Hmm.
sound and the weight of it. And especially in my field, which tends to study and try to interpret and perform music of the past, when of course all there were acoustic instruments. There is this concept of striving to become one with an instrument, and you feel it. I mean, I've only felt it in rare but ecstatic moments where I really know a piece so well and I'm connecting directly with it, but where your uh, biomechanical sort of coordination and control is unified with the instrument's internal mechanics, and at the point of attack you really feel like you are part of a one single organism, vibrating together, moving together, and ultimately creating this imaginative, colorful, symbolic art form at the same time. And I personally, not that one can't become one with synthetic and digital kinds of instruments, you certainly can. Um, but I think this feeling of vibrating together with an instrument is a very real and powerful experience. And you can always open the lid and actually see that you are technically making direct contact. It's maybe mediated by a very clever mechanism, and there is a whatever microscopically infinitesimally small lag or delay, just because of the speed of the mechanism. But what's really beautiful in piano playing is actually feeling like you are one with it and
Mm.
overcoming the gap that violinists don't have, that singers don't have, and feeling like you are bowing or singing the sound with the way you're touching the keys. And even though, I mean, literally, I've got you positioned on top of a Yamaha electric here, and I learned probably most of the series repertoire in my life practicing on keyboards, especially in New York, where you just can't make too much noise all the time. The goal always was then to return to, and oh my gosh, it's like suddenly after I've been practicing on a keyboard for a while and I find myself at any acoustic instrument, it's such a pleasure. And so
Hmm.
Yeah, I don't think it's going away. I think we live in a wonderful hybrid acoustic and electronic society. Uh, these spheres have been around for more than a century, by the way, and we're still playing pianos. But yeah, who knows where things are going? But I
Yeah.
wonder if that yeah speaks to you. So
Yeah, the violins, violas, the cellos, once you get up to the cellos and basses, it starts to become a bit of an issue. But that's the biggest obstacle for pianos is they're just heavy.
yeah.
That's probably one of the biggest issues why people, I'll just get a keyboard. But yeah, the power and impact is evident by the fact that we do still lug these things around and lug them up apartment buildings in New York
Mhm.
City and all these different things. Um, well, we are approaching the end here. It's been really interesting speaking with you. Thanks for all your dedication to, music and media and education. It's very inspiring. We appreciate all the joy and love that you put into this and the passion. Before we sign out, I would love to just see if there's any last minute things you want people to share with people. A link, something coming up, some words of wisdom. This is your moment to say what you like.
Yeah, no wisdom, but check out my channel and please subscribe if you found any of this interesting. It's just my name, Ben Laude, on YouTube. I've got an Instagram too. I'll sometimes spell my name phonetically, Lawdy, so it's clear how to say it. But Laude on YouTube, and check out the Chopin podcast, which you'll find a video playlist subset of there, or you can listen to it on platforms. And also built if you're into Chopin, I built a whole resource called the Chopin Podcast Opus Index, which is basically an app. I had a team build an app that references all of the moments from the 30 hours of content interviewing all these amazing musicians. So you can look up any piece and it takes you right to that moment, and you can watch the video clip of that. So always have different projects going on, and if you follow my channel, if you're really interested, check out the Patreon. You can sign up as a free member, and if any of the stuff I'm putting on there ever if you find interesting, you can upgrade. But yeah, I'm just constantly doing work, and I've got a whole pipeline of projects for 2026 that I'm super excited about. So just yeah, anyone who's interested in this kind of content creation, classical piano work that I do, yeah, join me.
Wonderful. All right. Well, thank you so much, Ben, for joining us. I'll walk us out here. We have reached the end of another musical journey here at Piano Tech Radio Hour. Thanks to Ben Laude for joining us, as well as our live audience on Zoom and elsewhere. As always, we're brought to you by Piano Technicians Masterclasses. That's cutting edge instruction from piano industry masters without leaving your home. If you joined us today by just signing up for this session individually, hey, make your life more convenient. Subscribe to Piano Tech Radio Hour, just $16 a month. You get each week's session here in our member area and automatic registration to join us. You can sign up at bit.ly/join PTRH, bit.ly/join PTRH. Do not forget about the podcast, pianotechradio.com, the Substack, the socials, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Sign up for the email list on our website. And I briefly referenced it, a related project that's just getting started called the Future Education Podcast. You can find more about that at uotu.xyz. And that'll be it for today. We'll see you again next week. Ben, I'll jump back on the Zoom with you after we let everybody go. And we'll talk to you